Okay, good morning, guys. We're in part two of our Kollel Boker here in Surfside. Couple of things. Rabbi Mastery this morning gave over an interesting halacha. We'll go into the details tomorrow because I'm just going to give it in brief. It's unbelievable. He brought this up. It's great. From Halacha Yomit, from Chama Badia Yosef and Cham Yitzhak Yosef. The statement was if a person were to eat less than 4 kabetzot in a sukkah of mizonot. If he ate 4, he's going to have to do Nitilat Yadayim and Birkat Hamazon. Let's say he ate only 3. So he would be Hayav in mizonot, but not in Birkat Hamazon. He states, the Chama Badia Yosef, that in that case, if he ate 3 kabetzot, he would have to make mizonot. He would have to make Asher Kiddishana b'Mitzvah Tzivanu L'Shev B'Sukkah and Beracha Acharona, but he doesn't have to make Birkat Hamazon, which is why, because he had a Kiviut Seudah in that case, but he didn't have enough for Birkat Hamazon. It's really interesting. We're going to I'll pull up all the sources. I got the link from the rabbi. We'll pull up all the sources, and tomorrow we'll read it inside coming up, which is unbelievable. It's very interesting. In regards to the pizza, because you mentioned pizza and you mentioned mahlukot, but that he does hamotzi, Rabbi Mansur has always taught pizza is hamotzi. There's nothing to talk about. Especially, I know that they sometimes put it with like apple juice or orange juice or make it sweet, but if a person is even eating 2 slices or more, and in those cases, Rabbi Mansur would always tell us that you're supposed to say Birkat Hamazon. And furthermore, he said that guarantees a person a lot of parnasah, because Birkat Hamazon is one of the only berachot from the Torah. And when a person reads it b'kavanah, is guaranteed to always have parnasah. He said, so a person should look for opportunities to say the Birkat Hamazon, not to run away from saying Birkat Hamazon. It's the only beracha that you actually have to say, and it's the only beracha that people want to run away from. It's funny. You know why? That's the Yetzer Hara. Because the Yetzer Hara knows those mizonot, the derabanans. No problem. Say all the mizonot you want. Say all the ala mehyas. Say everything you want. When it comes to Birkat Hamazon, he's going to convince everybody in every capacity not to want to do it. So that's interesting on that. In regards to the Syrian edict that we were learning last week, we learned about where it came from Argentina, Rabbi Shaul Sitahon Dabach. I sent an email to 7 rabbis of 6 from the New York, New Jersey community, 1 from Miami, in regards to this edict question. The question is as follows. When it came to adopted kids, Cham Baruch accepted them, from what I heard. So that wasn't the question. The question was, what is done when a guest from Israel comes that is a Talmid Hacham, head of a Jewish institution, or a Rosh Yeshiva, or Rosh Kollel, but he's descendant of a convert. His mother or grandmother converted, something to that capacity. I don't know. Do we reject him for an aliyah, or do we accept him in the aliyah, even though this is a descendant of a convert? That was the first question I asked them. The second question I asked him is that in Mexico, after 3 generations, they're accepting the converts. I don't know if it's on the 3rd or on the 4th, but I believe it's the 3rd. But nonetheless, I asked, is this something that is being done in New York, New Jersey? Because I haven't seen it, but I always wanted to know. I asked that question. One of the rabbis already returned back to me. He told me I'm not familiar with the details of it. And then I reached out to someone else. So when I get all the responses, I'm going to share them with you so you guys can have the answer on that. Tomorrow we're presenting also a $500 riddle on a Gemara. So for those that are interested, the riddle will be presented on YouTube, on Instagram, and we are also going to give the details of it. It's a Gemara. It was just by the Daf Yomi. It's a question I presented to a few rabbis. They all gave me answers that don't work. I told them that they don't work. I showed them that it doesn't work. And all I really want to know is the pshat on a Gemara. I'm going to share with the Gemara tomorrow. It's $500. It's going to be a 2-week time frame. To answer it, it'll have to be answered on YouTube in the comments, and you have to subscribe. We're going to get to that very, very shortly tomorrow. So we are very excited. Sukkot is coming up, very important. Besides Lulav and Etrog is only the first day of the holiday. The rest is the Rabbanan. The Ikad is building the Sukkah and sleeping in the Sukkah and eating in the Sukkah. So put your money towards a good Sukkah, because that's the Ikad of Sukkot. Let's get into our Sfarim and let's get into our learning Bezrat Hashem. All right, we're on the Chafetz Chaim daily learning, and we are continuing. So he tells you the Sefer Chafetz Chaim here is divided in two sections. What are the two sections of the book? The first one is the laws of Lashon Hara, and the second is the laws of Rechilut. What did we say Lashon Hara was the last time we spoke? It has to be true. Has to be true. If it's not true, it's Mutzi Shem Ra. So right away, Lashon Hara has to be something that is truthful, good. Then you have the second thing, that the book is divided into the law of Rechilut. What is Rechilut? Okay. Although the laws of Rechilut may generally be inferred from the laws of Lashon Hara, you learn from there, it's necessary to reiterate them a second section because of the great prevalence of it and the need of clear guidelines to know what is permitted and what is forbidden in speech. Once we learn the stuff, you're going to see it's going to be better for you. You're going to be more confident when you speak about situations because you'll know certain things are allowed or not allowed. Not everything is asur to talk about. There's a big grave mistake. That's the Yisr Hara's trick. He tells you everything's not allowed to talk about. That's not true, as we're going to see. The Chafetz Chaim authored another companion volume to this book called Shemirat HaLashon. This is not Shemirat HaLashon. This is the Sefer Chafetz Chaim. And there he compiled all the teachings of the Hachamim on Lashon Hara, the great reward for not speaking Lashon Hara, and the terrible punishment for somebody who speaks or who accepts. We're going to find out that acceptance of something is very important. Sometimes you can hear information that is Lashon Hara, but you can reject it and not accept it. We're going to find that's one of the tactics. The Shemirat HaLashon brings down that it's not simply enough to just learn Musar to prevent Lashon Hara. What's Musar? Musar is going to be works that we're going to read that help encourage you to stay on track, to inspire you. Musar is no different than Hashkafa, and Hashkafa and Musar are another words for philosophy. We don't say philosophy today, but Musar in that school is just philosophy in different terminology. Today we call it Hashkafa, but we're really asking, what's your philosophy? What do you feel about this? And that's there. What good is all the Musar in the world, which warns of the terrible prohibition of Lashon Hara and Rechilut, if a person permits himself to the baseless excuses that it's not considered Lashon Hara? Meaning, what's the purpose of encouraging everybody to don't talk about this, nothing about it, if he doesn't know what is Lashon Hara? And we might say the Torah permits me to talk about it. And the guy, let's say, I don't know, he'll say he's a Rasha. Who is a Rasha? Can you just call someone a Rasha? The Torah actually, the Halakha gives you criteria of who's considered a Rasha and who's not, or things of that nature. So that's just for today, and we'll continue tomorrow. So really, we're getting closer. Believe me, I think we have another, a good 10 days before we even start the first law of it. He's going to give us all the Pesukim that talks about the Berachot of people watch their mouth. He's going to give you all the curses that people speak Lashon Hara. He's going to tell you the mitzvot of the Torah, how many things a person violates if he speaks Lashon Hara. He's going to go through all those details of it. It's coming up in there. We're continuing in Mikdash Me'at. Mikdash Me'at is an unbelievable book on the sanctity of the synagogue, all sourced out. It seems to be written Be'elim Shem. I mean, there is a translator from the Hebrew to the English, but I haven't found who actually wrote the book. But it's a really old book, and we are reading in it. It's unbelievable. It's unfiltered, and that's why we're reading it, because we're here to learn the Torah through an unfiltered source to give the Torah in a clear way. Let's begin. Chapter 2. Okay. The tremendous reward for those who do not converse during Kaddish and Hazarat Hashatz and answer Amen Yeheh Shemeh Rabbah properly. Okay. What is the advice to save yourselves from young children from cancer, may God have mercy, or other fatal diseases such as heart attacks, blood clots, kidney disease, accidents, paralysis, asthma, nervous breakdowns, chronic illnesses, and other terrible illnesses? He says, what's the advice to save yourself? In the Sefer, Hagaon v'derech Moshe. I know you know, because we're reading, you know which book we're reading. In the Sefer, Hagaon v'derech Moshe, Yom 15, it's written, my brothers and friends, if you want to save yourself and your children from dying in the plague, God forbid, lo alenu, or from other horrible deaths like smallpox or measles. Refrain from conversing in the synagogue about any unnecessary matters. What's interesting is that Arizal didn't talk during Tefillah. That's not unbelievable. That's normal. The Arizal was not going to talk. What's unbelievable is that he didn't even teach Torah in the shul. That's what's unbelievable. Even the Torah he didn't teach in the shul. He made his business not to do speeches and stuff in the shul. And then after the Tefillah, he would run right out of the shul.
Weird question. Were Torah classes, or in whatever form they were delivered back then, were they delivered in Beit HaMikdash?
Like the Beit HaMikdash, yeah, for sure. But they usually had Batei Midrash. There was the difference between a Beit Knesset and the Beit Midrash is big. A Beit Knesset is specifically house of God in order to pray. A Beit Midrash is a place to learn. If a person has a choice to pray where he just prays or pray where he learns, he should pray where he learns, because the better energies and more beracha that comes from the learning of it. But they always had Batei Midrash, always, and they learned in the fields. They learned outside. So
reframing my question: in the Beit Knesset, not the Beit Midrash, the equivalent of today.
Yeah, same thing. It was the same thing. The same thing. Listen.
Can you learn from that now?
What is a Beit Midrash? Let's go down to this. What is a Beit Midrash? Leave aside Beit Knesset. What is a Beit Midrash? It's a room that has sfarim, chairs, and tables, and people learn Torah. That is a Beit Midrash. Guys, where are we? It's literally just a room. Not the Beit Knesset is right there. It's inside. But we're literally just in a room, and we're just sitting and learning Torah. That is when Yaakov Avinu sends Yehuda down to Goshen, he sent Yehuda down to open up Beit Midrash. Why didn't he send somebody else? Why didn't he send Levi? Why did he send Yehuda? Now, Levi could have been a good proponent to open it up. He's a rabbi. He became the Leviim, Kohanim, Moshe, Aharon, Miriam. I mean, literally, the whole family. And Levi was no pushover. Levi himself, 12 years old, him and his brother decided that they weren't thrilled with Shechem bin Hamor and all this stuff that was in Shechem. They killed out the whole city. But Hashem sends Yehuda. Hashem sends Yehuda to go down there to set up the infrastructure. When he did, what do you think he set up? He set up places for people to come and learn. So when Yaakov Avinu came down, they already had to set up the infrastructure. I don't think Yehuda had books. There were no books. There were no scrolls. Maybe there were scrolls, but the Torah was not written yet. So really, it was a place that they could learn privately. And many of the Sanhedrin, usually in Israel, the Sanhedrins and the Batei Dinim, from the time of the Beit HaMikdash, from the Shkat HaGazit, that's where the Sanhedrin stood, they always had it by a body of water. And when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed and the Sanhedrin had to move 10 places, almost all the 10 places were near a body of water. The last one being in Tveria, they set up the Sanhedrin by the body of water. Why? Because being by a body of water helps expand the mind when you're learning, when you look at an ocean. It calms a person, it helps him become wiser, his learning is accepted better. I don't know all the reasons, but we can look it up and see that. Now this is why when Eliyahu Hanavi Zachur Latov is going to reveal himself and bring the Mashiach, he's going to go to Tveria first. That's his first stop. Because what he's going to do is he's going to go back to the last place the Sanhedrin were. Where were you guys last? Here in Tveria? Let me go back to that last spot. Let's bring it back there, reconnect that charge that was there, and let's get this machine moving again. And Rav Yosef Shani in Israel, I met him when he came to Brooklyn. He was by my uncle's house, Jack Baghdadi. He gave a beautiful class, big Talmid Hacham. He's knowledgeable in the Chotem Shelomo. The Chotem Shelomo is a process of meditation that allows you to meditate to go to the upper worlds and come back down. He's done it multiple times, multiple people. I know people that have done it with him. There are unbelievable criteria, crazy stuff. If a person ever, has v'shalom, lo aleinu, ever went with a goya, he can't go up. It doesn't work. It needs a special tikkun because he tried doing it with someone. I remember he mentions some Israeli guy that was like in the army or something, and he kept on trying and he couldn't get him up. And he asked him, did you ever do that, Avon? And he said, yeah. The guy was a full religious guy at the time. Beard, everything. He said, you didn't make teshuvah. And the guy was embarrassed, but he said, "Don't worry. Come tomorrow." He came back. He said, "I'm going to show you how to make a full teshuvah on this." He did a whole thing of tikkun, and he got it out. And then he did the meditation, and he went up. Now, I know when this rabbi came and started, he wrote a book, Rabbi Yosef Shani, and he's on YouTube. You can check him out. When he came to New York, like he was talking in a way that he had something unique. So I asked a few rabbis around, not how many knew them. So I called in Israel. I mentioned his name, and he said yes. He's very well known. He was in a few Batei Midrash, but a few of the rabbis didn't want him around. I said, why not? He said, because seemingly they got jealous about what he got. I said, what are you talking about? He said there was an old man in Yerushalayim that used to know this Chotem Shlomo, this process of, because it talks about him in Shlomo HaMelech's writing, some of them in Shle, how like he used to sit in his castle and he used to have like birds and he used to go fly with them and come back. Like it talks all in ways that don't literally make sense in the literal sense. So there was this item, this has to do a little bit to some extent with Freemasons. It has something to do because the first Solomon Lodge of the Freemasons is in Beirut, Lebanon, and one of my uncles is part of it. I think two of my uncles are still is part of it. Now, Shlomo HaMelech had a lot of this chokhmot. One of them was this meditation of being able to, some form of astral projection of leaving the body. Meditation, this kind of ties itself later. You see in the Gemara, it says that Rabbi Akiva and Ben Zoma and Elisha, and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, they went up to Gan Eden and they saw things and they came back. This kind of ties itself into that. What do you mean? How did they go to Gan Eden? Was it on earth? Was it a spiritual thing? So it ties itself to this Chotem Shlomo. So when I asked Rabbi Abadi about this in Israel, he told me that there was an old man in Yerushalayim, simple businessman, went on his day, but it's a big Tamid Chacham. He got from another Zaken before him in Yerushalayim the Chotem Shlomo. And he was deciding who to choose and give this over from the schools that understood this. So he went around and he was looking for a rabbi that he felt was the most suitable. He chose this rabbi to give it to him, and he gave it to him. He taught him the whole process. The other rabbis didn't get it that was in his group, and they were not so thrilled about it. And Rabbi Yosef Shani ran with it. He does tikkunim with it. He does things with it. B'ezrat Hashem, when we go to Israel, we will visit him. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to go on a trip, all of us in our group to Israel, and we'll go visit him. He's a great Talmid Chacham. He's so enjoyable to talk to. He's great. Loves. Where does he live? I think he's in Yerushalayim, somewhere in Yerushalayim. So we're gonna bump into him. That's the Chotem Shlomo of Rabbi Yosef Shani. He has unbelievable stories and insights. I definitely recommend you checking him up on YouTube. Okay, so let's continue in the book. The Shlah HaKadosh warns that one must run with his young children away from the place where there is smallpox. And if one does not want to run in the future, he will stand with his sons in judgment for causing his children to die. This came about due to the fact that our forefathers spoke in the synagogue, and today we too, even the Gedolei Hador, are guilty of this, and it has almost become permitted. I have come to awaken your pure hearts and all the Rabbanim and righteous leaders in every congregation to instruct the Shamosh, over here writes sexton. A sexton is the English word of Shamosh. To admonish the congregation not to talk during prayers. He should announce Shetika Yafa Bish'ata Tefillah, that silence is proper during the prayer. The first letters of which spells out Seva. They say, okay, to imply that they will have a Seva Tova, pleasant old age. They say, how does a person guarantee himself long life? Is Segula, is brought down. Don't talk in shul during the Tefillah. Why? Because Seva, the word Seva is Sin Yud Bet Hey. Okay, and it's a acronym for Shetika Yafa Bish'ata Tefillah. Seva. Shetika Yafa Bish'ata Tefillah. So they say, if you have the Shetika Yafa, you can have. So they say, O Jinevum Beseva Deshanim Ra'ananim Yeyu. Guy wants to be in old age. He wants to be healthy. He wants to be strong. He wants to have vigor. Keep your mouth shut during the Tefillah. You got the easiest sigula in the world to live a long, healthy life. You want anything easier than that? Don't do it. It's one of those things that don't do anything, and you get something. It's great. Every person should be zealous in performing this easy repentance. If until now he has been lax, he should correct his ways from now on and admonish his friend. He has an obligation to do so. as it states in the Shulchan Aruch, Siman 124. It seems to me that the Shulchan Aruch implies that he is likened to a killer who killed several children. Wow, I told you, this was unfiltered. I wanted to, when we chose Farim over here, we went deep. There's two more I think we're going to add after Sukkot that go even farther. But listen, someone's got to read these books. No, I mean, they didn't write them for the Gentiles. I'm assuming they wrote them for the Jewish people. So someone's got to read from here and at least teach it. Okay, I'll take it on. It's not a big deal. It's an interesting thing.
The Chidush is more that it's not only mundane matters, also Torah stuff.
It's also Torah stuff. That's the crazy part. Mm-hmm. But when you think about it, when you really think about the basis of it, how often are we coming together to band together and say, all right, we have a God in the world. This is Him. We appreciate what He's doing. He's giving us. He's protecting us. He's saving us. How often do we do this? So when we do it, if you're coming to the place that you're doing it and you're defiling that place, then where is the place that you honor God? This is where it ties itself to the next phase. That, okay, so if this is not the place, where is the place? And we say that the Shekhinah is suffering. What do you mean suffering? What is this? The Shekhinah wasn't in the second Beit HaMikdash. It's brought down in the Gemara Meforash. Shekhinah was not there. So from the time really of the first Beit HaMikdash, that's why in the Keter on Musa we say V'yigalenu Shenit. You should give us a second redemption. We didn't have the second Beit HaMikdash was not our redemption. We had one redemption from Mitzrayim. We're waiting for the second of the Mashiach. And if this is the house of God, this is where if we're not going to honor Him, where are we going to do it? You understand? And what we do to the Shekhinah is that we made Him homeless. You understand? What happened with these avanot is that God is homeless today. Today you see so many homeless on the street. I see homeless in New York all over the place, and now even in Brooklyn, and they're not even stopping it from what I see. I think in my mind that God is homeless too. He has no Beit HaMikdash. The only place that God has is the heart of a person who commits himself to God. That's when a person commits himself to doing mitzvot and giving from his heart to God, that's where God's presence is right now, in the live of a person. And what we do with a Mikdash Me'at, this book is called Mikdash Me'at, because the shul is called a Mikdash Me'at, not a Beit HaMikdash, a big Mikdash Gadol, is we try to reenact what that is here. And so, if we're not going to do it properly, it's no different than if a guy was in the Beit HaMikdash and he was bringing in Korban and he started talking to his friend. What do you think the Kohanim would have done? They would have thrown him out. You think the Kohanim in the Beit HaMikdash were pushovers? I'll give you an interesting thing. It says that if one of the Leviim had to guard the door, they had to do it overnight. Let's say he snoozed off. He started snoozing, the guy. So on his doorpost, instead of being awake as a guard, he snoozed off. It was 3:15 in the morning. He snoozed for 20 minutes. The next Levi that comes, if they catch him, they burn his garment. One, to embarrass him, that he walks out. Why is your thing burned? Did you fall asleep last night? Right away they tell him. They were not shy. The Leviim were not. This is the Beit HaMikdash over here. You don't know how to behave, go outside. We're not here to play games in the system. Why? It's not that they were tough and that they wanted to be this way. They said that's the ingredients that you need to get those tefillot answered. If we're not this way, it doesn't work. That is the process. And this book is telling you that just being silent guarantees you blessing. Here in the pasuk it applies, "In vain did I beat your sons; they did not accept my rebuke." Meaning they did not accept the rebuke and continue to speak in the synagogue. Therefore, their sin is as great as the sin of Cain. Wow, who killed his brother. So great was his sin that it was too great to be forgiven. Wow. Yet the power of repentance is so great that it justified him and others with him. Meaning teshuvah can undo everything. Your sins will become merits, and you will create angels of mercy. It will bring life to you and your children after you. That's all for today. So unbelievable. Again, this is... he's got hundreds of pages here. It's unbelievable. And every single page is more and more sources. He doesn't stop, or she, the translator. So it's really, really great. Okay, we're back to Enlighten Our Eyes by Rabbi Yosef Shlomo Goldschmidt. Okay, he's teaching us how to protect our eyes, what to look at, what not to look at. Fundamentals of Sheminat Einayim, Part 1, the power of Torah. Hashem tells us, his beloved children, I created the Yetzer Hara, and I created the Torah as its antidote. It's Kiddushin 30, Lamed. It's funny, because tomorrow we're going to open up Kiddushin Lamed for our riddle. That's going to be a $500 riddle. So it's funny. That page is coming up today. Remember I told you guys that when we're learning, you're going to be able to see the connections? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow's question is on Kiddushin Lamed. It's unbelievable. It says here, Lamed Amud Bet, but ours is Lamed Amud Aleph. So he said, what the statement is, who created the Yetzer Hara, who's the desire that makes you look and do things that are wrong? God. So God says, Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati lo Torat Tavlin. I created for him a Torah as a spice, antidote, Torat Tavlin. Now, why is it called the spice? Because we need the Yetzer Hara. We can't be without him right now. What it means is that we need the Yetzer Hara to help us to do things. It's crazy to say this, but the Chachamim tried to abolish the Yetzer Hara, and they failed at getting the mission accomplished. They had to bring him back. So when it says here, tavlin, just like a tavlin is a spice that you put on something, the Torah is the spice that you put on the Yetzer Hara that makes it work. You have to control the Yetzer Hara, and it's hard. But the Torah is the tavlin that you put on top of it. Because it could God would say, Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Lecha Trufa, or something to remove it. He didn't say remove it. He said spice it up. What I mean is, like, if the Yetzer Hara was a steak, don't remove the steak. Just season it the right way. The Torah will season it properly so that it will be controlled. The Mesilat Yesharim observes that if Torah is the remedy which Hashem prescribed, then that's final, which means it's the only one. Success will not be possible without it. Torah learning releases profound power, sheltering the learner from sin. The more involvement in Torah learning, the higher the level of protection. Now, of course, the Torah learning is on everyone's level. Meaning, to me, it could be something I enjoy, you enjoy, you enjoy. That's when you say at the end of the Amidah, give me my piece. What do you mean? I thought it's all mine. No, you got to get your piece. What's your chilek? What speaks to you? Is it midrashim, gemara, mishnayot, halacha? Everyone has that thing. Some people shechita, sometimes brit milah. Everyone has the mitzvah as something. Take what you have a desire for in the Torah and go with it. Go run with it. Advance yourselves. You know, in Brooklyn, this is very common. We have people that are ba'alei batim. He's a sofer. The guy knows how to write Sefer Torah. He writes Megillah. You have ba'alei batim, the shohatim. You have another ba'alei batim, they're experts in this halacha. Another one in shiduah hakan. Another one in this. And in random, awkward mitzvot nobody knows, you always have this one guy in the community that knows it. That's why, like, coming down here, came here for work a couple of years, and I got to tell you, that's the one thing that excites me about Brooklyn, is that the learning there far supersedes anything I've seen down here. Even the NMB, Kollel, and all that stuff, which is great. It's just different. You know, the amount of Jews together there, it brings a different level of learning. Okay, so to strengthen your commitment to Torah study, you could use Musar, which turns up your inner fire. Why not start some new subject or research a topic that happens to interest you? Meaning, if you have an interest in researching something in Torah, go for it. This will help you even when you're not in front of the Sefer. Why? Because when you're researching Torah, and I do it a lot, I learned that it forces my mind to be stuck to that topic because I'm constantly thinking of how to make the connection. So that's what Amelut in the Torah is. It's a big difference between Lidmod Torah and to be osek in the Torah. Lidmod Torah means you open the book, you read it, you had a basic, good level, simple level understanding, and you got it. Amelut Torah is next level. You're starting to think, how did he write this? Where did he get it from? What were their sources? Is that right? Let's double check this. And you start to go deeper and deeper. And you start to understand what he was saying. And then you find the scroll that takes out a word or adds a word. And suddenly you have a different meaning of what he was trying to say. That's Amelut. You took the Torah and you are digging and you're going far with it. There's a big difference between a guy who reads the simple halacha from Yalkut Yosef and the guy who's me'ayin from the Mishnah to the Gemara to the Mefarshim, the Rishonim. That's Amelut. God wants Amelut b'Torah. Amelut is the extra, to some it could be sweat. But, here, to strengthen your commitment to Torah, you could use it. Okay, this will help you even when you're not in front of the Sefer. And when in the street, mentally reviewing some Torah thoughts or listening to a Torah lecture will become your personal protection. Okay, So his first suggestion here on page 1 is a simple one. He says that the Masechet Kedushin Daf Lamed says, Barati Yetzirah, Barati Lo Torah Tavlin, I created that spice. That spice is the Torah. So what's one way you could do it? By researching Torah that interests you, thinking about that Torah, or listening to a class. That is his first suggestion to protect your eyes. So if you're in a place that you can't, by thinking and by learning, that will be a thing. And we'll go on tomorrow. We will continue. All right, let's continue with our Gemara, guys. Okay. Do you want to go back a little bit, Lior? We're at the bottom of the page. We kind of we almost finished the Amud. Yeah. We've done a lot, but we only finished the Amud on the surface. We're going to finish all the Rashis, and we're going to go to some Rishonim. Tomorrow we're going to go further. We're going to continue also in Rabbeinu Hananel today. So let's continue. Okay, so Ika de Amre. Let's go back a second so we can get onto the page.
Yeah, so we were talking about why Rabbi Yochanan's explanation, refutation doesn't work.
Rav Shemin said, Rav Shemin bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he says, Bizmanehem. He said there were many days. Okay, that was good. Then we had later on another Rabbi Rav Shmuel bar Yitzhak. He said, Zman Kila Lakol. Good. He said 13 was covered day all the time. Mm-hmm. So we had 14 and 15 in the Mishnah. We had Rav Shemin bar Abba and the name of Rabbi Yochanan tell us Bizmanehem. And we had Rav Shmuel bar Yitzhak tell us that 13 was good. So we had 2 days from the Mishnah. We had 2 days from a word Bizmanehem, and we were missing 1 day. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzhak said 13 was good. Great. Then came Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani and said, why did you use Bizmanehem? Use the word Kayamim. Okay, the Gemara went back and forth and said, no, we're going to use that for future generations. Mm-hmm. And that was that. So comes Amar Abba bar Hanan, Rabbi Hanan, that he said that this Mishnah was from Rabbi Akiva Setim Ta'a. Okay? And that he was Dorish Zman Zmanam Zmanehem. Okay. That the Chachamim said you only read it in the right time of 14 and 15, unless the Braita tells us from Rabbi Yehuda that Israel is on their land and that they have a Sanhedrin. Why? Because the concern was for Pesach. The concern was that if they start playing with the days of reading the Megillah, they might start Pesach early and they might be eating Hametz at the end of Pesach. So in order to prevent that, the Chachamim said, if we don't have the system down pat, and we don't have control of the land, and we don't have everything in place, don't start changing days because you're going to put people at risk. Okay. So that was a braita that was brought by Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda liba deman. Who was Rabbi Yehuda following? If we say Rabbi Yehuda was following Rabbi Akiva held that you can read on 11, 12, and 13. Okay? What was Rabbi Yehuda saying with this braita? He was saying that even if you could read on 11, 12, 13, 14, or 15, you can't do it anymore because we're not in the same position. So the question goes back, Rabbi Yehuda, who do you follow? Do you follow Rabbi Akiva? You don't, because Rabbi Akiva says 11, 12, 13. So, afilu bazman hazeh ita lahai takanta. And he said, furthermore, ela lav aliba de rabbanan. You must follow the rabbis. ובזמן שהשנים כתקנן ולשנים על מתן כדינן בתיובתן רבי יוחנן תיובתה. So what happened here? They said that Rabbi Yehuda could not have been following Rabbi Akiva. He must have been following the rabbis who says that you can only read 14 and 15. You understand, Ariel? You getting it? If you don't, ask me.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is this a tiyuvtat Rabbi Yochanan? Because the first statement of our Gemara was Rav Shemin bar Abba, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that you could read it on 11, 12, and 13. Okay? And now we have Rabbi Yehuda bringing us a braita that's telling us that it's only going to be on 14 or 15. And so this conflicts with Rabbi Yehuda's statement, Rabbi Yochanan's statement. That Rabba bar Hana is saying that is Zman Zmanam Zmanehem. Are we understanding it so far? Mm-hmm. Okay, because the first statement of Rabbi Yochanan was Amar Rav Shemin bar Abba. He was the first one. He said Bizmanehem. Then we have another person says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that you don't read it only in Zmanah. So what was it? It must have been that Rabbi Yochanan had an opinion that during the time of the Beit HaMikdash, you can read all the days. And then when the Beit HaMikdash is not around, you can only read the 2 days. That seems seemingly to Yufta, the Rabbi Yochanan Yufta. Okay, let's continue in Ika de Amre.
Ika de Amre Rabba Bar Chana.
Okay, what's Ika de Amre? Some say good. Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yochanan.
Zu divrei Rabbi Akiva Sitinta Aval Chachamim Amru Bazman Hazeh Ho'il U'Mistaklin Ba.
Okay, en korin ota ela bizmana. Okay, so what is he saying here? Saying they're making a change in it. They're saying Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. That zu the Mishnah divrei Rabbi Akiva sitim ta'a. Okay, aval chachamim amru bazeman hazeh ho'il u'mistakelim ba. They look at what? They look at the day that they read the Megillah to calculate when Pesach's going to fall out, because they start counting. They didn't have calendars, physical calendars. En korinota ela bizmana. So we only read it on that. And if you look at this, we explained this exact before. Okay, the Gemara continues. Tanya nami hachi. What's Tanya? What's Tanya? It's not the Chabad. It's not the Chabad book.
You're gonna bring a Braita.
Bring a Braita. Every time you see it, I want you to know the thing. Tanya nama hachi. Okay, there's also been told in the Braita. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Ketiknan
v'Yisrael shiruin al admatan.
Okay, we've seen this already. This Braita. Aval bazeman hazeh.
אבל בזמן הזה הואילו מסתכלים בה, אין קוראים אותם אלא בזמנה.
Okay, we've seen this. We've seen this exact Braita before.
So we're saying that only
we're repeating the exact Braita.
Yeah.
That during the period when it was fixed, and they're in their land, they can read all 5 days. Otherwise, it's only 2. Rav Ashe the Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so Rav Ashe sees a kashya between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. What's the kashya between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda? Let's look again at the Braita. I want to compare it. Imatai bizman she'ashanim ketiknan v'yisrael shidurim al matan. אבל בזמן הזה הואיל מסתכלים בה, אין קוראים אותה אלא בזמנה. Interesting. Let's see what Rav Asher is kushya. Let's continue. Umokim la Librata Kerabi Yose Bar Yehuda. So, hey Yossi, how are you? So, let's see. What's Rav Asher's kashya? Let's go into the kushya. What's Rav Asher's problem here?
His problem is
it said Ika de Amre. Some say Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Zu divrei Rabbi Akiva sitim ta'a. Okay, we've already said this. What's the difference between the version that's here and the previous version? It's missing something. Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Zu divrei Rabbi Akiva sitim ta'a. Look at the other one. It had in there the word Didarish Zman Zmanam Zmanehim. You see that? You understand what I'm saying?
in
the first Braita, it's missing 4 words. The Darish Zman Zmanam Zmanehim. It just takes it out, and it goes straight to Aval Chachamim. It says here Omrim. This is Amru. Aval Chachamim, not Omrim. Amru Bazeman Hazeh Ho'il U'Mistakelim Ba Ve'en Konita Ela Bizmana. Okay, so what's the difference in this Braita? They told us 2 things. It dropped the Darish Zman Zmanam Zmanehim. Okay, that was the first thing on the statement, not the Braita, on the statement, and then it also included another thing that what was the issue? Bazeman hazeh ho'ilu mistakerim ba. The other one didn't say that. You see, the other one that said en korinata ela bizmana. You only read it in its time. The other one was a little bit more. It has more clarification. Bazeman hazeh, meaning in a different zman, it would be okay. You see, by changing the statement now, what are we doing, Ariel? We're trying to say that trying to fix any argument that we tried to do before, to organize before Rabbi Yohanan. Okay? So we had a statement that was made that was from Rabba Bar Hana, from the statement of Rabbi Yohanan. Well, what happened? We said the previous Braita that who was the author of the Mishnah? How do we know the author of the Mishnah? So we said Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. Now Rabbi Meir is a student of Rabbi Akiva. We read Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yohanan. We said in this rabbi's name, Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva Setim Ta'a. That was Rabbi Akiva's statement that he was bidoresh zman zmanam zmanehem. He did that whole thing. Aval Hachamim Omrim in konim ta'ila bizmana. Only in the time. Then we had another statement come in. How did Rabbi Yehuda? How did he make this next statement of the Braita? He said, "Bizman hashanim ketiknan, v'yisel shurin al matan, aval bizman hazeh ho'il mistakenim ba'en kronim ta'ila bizmana." He said, when we have the land of Israel and we have the Sanhedrin and everything's under our control, then we could read it all the days, the 5 days. But if we don't, we're only going to read it 2 days, 14 and 15. You're with me? Why? Because what's going to happen? We found out later in the next statement of the correction of Rabba Bar Hana. He said, why? He said, because people back then, they always would know the main dates. Like, for example, if they knew today was Rosh Hashanah, they knew the 10th day is Yom Kippur, the 14th day at night is going to be, the 15th is going to be Sukkot. That's how they counted. It's not like the guy came to shul, look at what time is Sukkot starting tomorrow. They made their calculations that way. They knew today's Rosh Hashanah, that's the next holiday. So what happened was, if we're going to do Purim and read the Megillah at a different date than the 14th, what's going to end up happening? The guy's going to count 30 days. Now, suddenly, the 13th of Nisan, he starts Pesach. So, no problem. Maybe no problem to start on the 13th. But when he finishes, it's a problem. When he finishes, he goes back, he starts to eat his hametz, and he does it. Now, as a side note, selling hametz. You know, we're going into the selling of hametz because we're talking about a case of it. What is this whole idea of selling hametz? So I asked my dad is from Beirut, Lebanon. I asked him, I said to him, in Lebanon, did you guys do this? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, nobody sold any hametz. He said, you threw it all out. I said, nobody. He said, Yemen also, right? So I thought a lot about this. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, this whole thing, it goes to Ashkenazim. Produced this over here when they came to America. It never existed.
So they have everything fresh. I mean, they didn't have.
Yeah, they had everything fresh. You're right.
The ability to store
was different. So you're right. There was definitely a different world than it was back then. Even like 60, 70 years ago. But what's interesting is that they never sold the hametz there. And for a few years, I did this. Like after learning this, and my dad told me, I'm like, I don't get it. He's like, you didn't? He's like, we just threw everything out. So what I started doing for a few years is I would sell the hametz, but I would throw any hametz I had out or give it away for free, and I would not keep any hametz in my house. Because I made a calculation over the couple of years, that how much hametz do I actually have? Let's say I calculated the total financial value of everything that was truly hametz. I mean real hametz items. Hametz gamur. I added up. It's a couple $100. A couple $100. Let's say at most it's $500. I said, if I'm going to go on a Pesach trip, and I'm going to go on a Sukkot trip, and I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going and saving $500 for the hametz. I said, am I fooling myself? I'm like, it's not a big deal. Give it away for free, and you buy it again. My wife brought up something interesting. She said, no, not just a chadame. No, she said, you're right. She goes, but it is inconvenient to go buy all those small items over. You don't realize that buying all those spices and stuff over is an issue. And Chamusafi always talks about the spices for Pesach. He says there's a lot of hametz in it. A lot of hametz. Why? Especially black pepper. Why? He said because he's a mashgiach. You know, he's not a mashgiach mina halonot. He's a mashgiach Musafi. You understand? No, because he really investigates, and the stuff that he reveals when he speaks, it's unbelievable stuff. He said that what was the issue with black pepper? He said that black pepper, the kamuyot, the volumes are small. So what do they sometimes do? They mix in it other ingredients. One of them being flour. and it's not well known. He goes, but that's why sometimes the person can have an allergic reaction to something that he has absolutely no clue where it's coming from. They mix things today in the process and in the to grow volume in these stuff. They mix it. So he said they mixed flour in it. He said that's why on Pesach, if you get the good black pepper, you have to use very little because it's not the same volume that you're using during the year. During the year, you can put more and it's okay. But on Pesach, he said this happened when he was a mashgiach in one of the hotels on Pesach, and one of the chefs put a lot of black pepper, but his normal volume on the food, and all the food came out very, very unedible. And he said, I used the same exact thing I used to always put on my. I always put black pepper. He said, yeah, but this is kasher the Pesach. This one is the real thing. There's no dilution here. And so Chamus Afi said, be very careful with it. I asked a few of the mashgichim here if they're aware of it. They're like, no, I never heard of that. I think they never. Someone saying they never heard of something doesn't mean it's not true. It just not mean they said, listen, I investigated and I researched and I found and I asked and I didn't see it. Okay, doesn't hear about it. Okay, didn't hear about it. It is what it is. So this was the issue with Purim and with Pesach. I'm following that. So let's continue. Tanya Nami Hachi. It was also taught in another Braita. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, same thing about בזמן הזה, הורים מסתכלים בה, אין קונתה אלא בזמנה. Okay, they repeated it again. רב אשר קשה לדרבי יהודה עד רבי יהודה. So there's a contradiction with both Rabbi Yehuda's statements.
Well, he agrees with Chachamim, and then he agrees with Rabbi Akiva.
He agrees with both. He's really talking. He's really talking Rabbi Yehuda in two different times.
Yeah.
One before the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, one after. After the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, 1415, you can't play around with that. Before the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, you can read all 5 days. Why is this important?
But what is the difference? They knew the time, they have people, they have Sanhedrin, they have...
Yeah, no, but not after. After Churban Abayit, we didn't have the San. No, I mean they had the Sanhedrin. They did, but that's why the Braita said two things: Yisrael Shirurin Alad Matan, and they had they had the San. It was two things because there's both. They you understand? They had the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin didn't abolish itself right away. It still kept itself together. They went in Galut. I told you today, 10 places. So it was still around. They kept running away. They would go from one place and they would hunt them down. They would have to go to another place. And could you imagine trying to set up a Sanhedrin every time you're trying to set it up and they're running away from authorities? It was crazy. It was crazy. And
the target on the biggest rabbi's backs also.
Yes. And they killed many of the Gedolim. They were not able to set up infrastructure. They knew once you start to set up Sanhedrin, the rabbis are in place. They're going to start to opening up yeshivot, and people are going to start to move in, and they're going to start to build up.
So whenever they didn't have, they couldn't read it for those days.
Only 14, 15.
They have Beit HaMikdash, they couldn't do it.
Yeah, and we're trying to understand Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda came...
Why? We said because of
the counting. That they would count 30 days.
Why did they make a mistake if they have Sanhedrin?
So what it is that it was two things. The Sanhedrin became weaker and weaker as they were moved from place to place. When they're in their headquarters, the world headquarters of Lishkat HaGazit, in the Beit HaMikdash, they had their power, they had authority, the kings, the princes, the queens, the leaders, because they had their infrastructure set up. They had the headquarters. We have a headquarters, we have agents, we have places, we can communicate. The moment they destroyed their headquarters, they're on the run. Their Sanhedrin could have been made of folding chairs and tables, and they're just getting around just for the sake of having a Sanhedrin. As it became weaker and weaker, they realized if we're not going to get the system into a way that the normal Jew can determine, the process, we can't leave this in limbo. They were also fearful. They were fearful that individuals were going to come along and change the Torah. The Kara'im were today like modern-day conservative. The Kara'im, they follow only the Torah, no Torah She'Ba'al Peh. It was a major problem. It was such a big issue. You don't realize how big of an issue. It was such a big issue that during the Yom Kippur Mahzor, when they're teaching him, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, Lior, when they're teaching in the Yom Kippur Mahzor of Kohen Gadol in the Siddur Avodah Musaf, one of the things they make him do is they make him promise and swear that you're not going to change from what we just taught you. Who are you talking to? You're not talking to your friend. You're talking to the Kohen Gadol. He's on his mission to go in there to have kapara for all Am Yisrael. After the rabbis and everybody told him, promise that you're not going to change. What do you mean? They were worried that he might do something like the Kara'im. Because the Kara'im, at the time, were powerful. Financially, they were powerful in the government, and they were very powerful in education and Torah. And they wielded their power and their expertise to the extent that they could. Rav Saadia Gaon was still fighting them. He was a Gaon. He was already in the year like 700, 800. He was still fighting them 500, 600, 700 years after the Chorban Habayit, after the Gemara was written. They were still around. These Kara'im, they're still around till today.
Not so many.
Huh?
Not so many.
No, they are around. I'll tell you what the difference, why today it's not.
You don't see them in Israel.
I'll tell you what it is. They're still around. And the ideology is still around. But they don't care enough to fight for it. There was a time where people were willing to fight for a religion, for the text. This is how it's supposed to be. Today, between all the addictions and between all the attractions that life has,
It became secondary.
they became, all right, the heck with that. All right, I got it. Yeah, we believe in that. It's, I'll give you, like, I know someone who's conservative. I know them. They live in Chicago. I know them well. Good friend. I know them. Husband and wife, kids, older kids, majorly off the derech. One kid became, he's with a man. The daughter went with the goy. The other daughter is divorced. Just problem after problem. But they live in like an Orthodox community in Chicago. And so like I used to tell them, I'm like, I don't get it. Why don't you just go to the Orthodox shul? I'm like, you really believe this stuff? I'm like, you believe like it's it's not the rabbis? I'm like, he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so why do you wear talit? He's like, what do you mean? It says in the Torah. I said, yeah, but the Torah doesn't tell you how to make the garment, how to make the strings. I'm like, what about tefillin? I'm like, everything that you do doesn't make any sense if you say that, because you have to follow the rabbis, because you can't create a religion with just the Torah itself. It will never work. Nothing works. Everything is contradictory with just the text of the Torah. It's all short form. And I would always ask him this, and he tried to, but what I understood, what I understood, he didn't want to say he doesn't want to be religious, because he came from a religious background. He doesn't want to say, he wants to leave the religion. So he figured, how can he stay in the religion in a way that his conscience will still be acceptable to him, but at the same time, do whatever he wants. And conservative was great. Conservative told him, listen, you can drive to shul on Shabbat, you can eat anything you want, that's kosher, it's okay, it's kosher style. Everything became a nothing.
Someone asked me if it's better to do that or to leave the religion altogether, and I had no idea what to answer.
Well, that's a crazy question to ask and to answer. I'm not a posek halacha ever. I'm not looking to do that. I have no intention of that. We're here just to learn Torah. When we talk halacha, I always tell you the source, and I tell you ask your rabbi to do it. That's not what we're here. We're here to learn. But it's a good question based on the learning. Based on the learning that we're doing, seemingly leaving is better than changing. Why? Because leaving, he can come back. Changing, he believes what he's doing is right. And
also, you're taking the right way, and you do it the wrong way, and you can take with you other people, and your family, and community. You're changing the Torah.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, you don't touch the Torah, it's fine. But when you take the Torah and you change it the way you want,
it's a problem. It's a big problem. That's why, that's the difference between, I shouldn't say in that capacity, but there's like these concepts in New York and in New Jersey of black hat and white hat. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah.
Black hat, obviously black hat means a black hat. It literally means that those on the yeshiva, they're the people of the book and everything. So what's the white hat? So the white hat concept is, it was generally those in the community that wanted to be more lax They want it to be more easy with halachot and stuff. So
Wearing
what?
the cap.
So no, not wearing the cap. They wouldn't wear a kippah at all, or like some of them. Again, there's no white hat terminology that you're going to have a definition. This is just off the cuff, and it's not a definition where you can take it. But I can tell you one thing I learned about white hats, and
White hats is not wearing kippah.
No, white hat, they wear kippah. They wear kippah. But I'll tell you, usually the white hat congregants are people that don't wear the kippah outside. Usually, you understand that from their congregants. Yeah, usually. But again, there's no rule, no definition. But I'll tell you one thing I know about white hats. Very important. The white hats are very knowledgeable in text. So what they do is they normally will find texts that agree with what they want to do. The black hats can do the same thing, but just when they find those texts, they try to justify doing the better or the more. The white hat will be like, look, I found.
He's gonna look for it.
I found a teshuvah from Rabbeinu from Italia from 480 years ago that said it's mutar. And what's your connection to him? Nothing. But that's his source that he uses for everything in his life. Or like I had a few friends that were white hats that they were big harambams. Yeah. Harambam. And I used to like look at them and I'm like, what are you saying? I'm like, you're not. Stop saying that. You sound silly. You only sound right when you go to people that don't know what you're saying. I'm like, you sound like an idiot. He's like, what? I'm like, we're in a party right now. You don't see where we are? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we're in a bar mitzvah, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you just kissed 3 married women. You know what Harambam says about kissing married women on their cheek when you greet them? I'm like, what are you talking? You don't follow Harambam. Don't give me this Harambam nonsense. And I'm like, furthermore, all your meat is taref according to Harambam. It's like, what do you mean? I'm like, because he has a system where you have to put the meats in hot water and cold water, and we don't do this anymore. We don't follow Harambam. Maybe the Temanim do it, but if you're buying meat from the store...
If you do Harambam, do everything else.
Yeah, meaning if you're going to buy meat from the store, that's not kosher to Harambam. And if you're a Harambam guy, follow Harambam. I assure you, if Harambam was alive today, he's not going to be thrilled with going around without a kippah, kissing women, other married women on the party. I see no understanding of how a guy can tell me he's a white hat Rambam. But I'll tell you one thing that I notice about white hats. It's important. They're very knowledgeable. They're very knowledgeable because they source out what they're looking for. They learn. They're not learners. Another thing I noticed about them, this is weird, but I noticed it because I still pray in a lot of white hat shuls. And I learned with a few people like in those environments, is that there's a lot of achdut amongst them. A lot of shalom. And that's their strength. Their strength is they're united. The black hat schools, the ideologies, are not as united as the white hats. And that's why if you notice from the white hats, they do have a good strength in that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes shalom. He likes shalom so much. The peace is everything. You know, Ariel, you don't realize how much God wants peace. You know what? In Bigdal Bavel, you know, sure. We read. Remember, we said. We said those are the things that Adam ochel mipiroteim ba'alam hazeh v'kerem kayim lo l'olam haba. Shalom ben ish leishto from Haverim. You see 2 Haverim that they're arguing. It's very interesting. But the white hats have a lot of achdut.
Question: white hat is the inference that they're lax to the point where it's not kosher, or it's
no has v'shalom. So, no. It's more just a lax.
Okay.
More just a laxity. That's what it is. And there's shalom amongst all the communities in Brooklyn. It's not, they just each want their own way. You know, some of them have their own schools and everything. But I'll tell you, I told you there's a lot of achdut amongst them. But I'll tell you something weird about the white hat teachers in particular, is that let's say they have a pulpit position. They always use their pulpit position to put down the Gidolim. Or I mean like the Avot. What do I mean? I was in a shul once on a Friday night, and a white hat rabbi got up, and he pulled up a Ramban Nachmani on Avraham Avinu, that Avraham Avinu made a mistake. He put Sarah inside of the box and took her to jail. And whatever. He brought out Ramban. It is a Ramban. He showed it. He sourced it. And he was right. Meaning he learned it. I got it. He read it and he gave the definition. But my response to that was,
they're concentrating on the bad.
That's exactly what I said. And I brought that up. I said, that's what makes you white hat. Is that there's over 1,000 Mefarshei Torah. One of the things on shul.com on the projects that I'm doing, I'm not finished with it, is I'm listing all the Mefarshim of the Torah along with links to online locations where you can learn them. And I'm not talking about Mikraot Gedalot or the ones that you know. I'm talking about 1,000 Mefarshim that I'm working on a list Bili Neder, that's going to be linked. So let's say you want to learn the parasha this week from a rabbi from the 1300s that you never heard of. I'm organizing that now. It's going to be unbelievable. My response to that is, you didn't find anything in the parasha other than something that if you said it from a pulpit was going to push people away from learning Torah more. You know, if a guy, not everyone.
He wants you to learn this.
Exactly. But I agree with you. But then if you're going to do it that way, don't do it from the pulpit. When you have only 10 or 15 minutes to sit and give a speech on Shabbat, you're limited how much you can do. Now, most people that are coming Friday night, they're not sitting and reviewing the Ramban, Be'iyun, checking it and going in that way. They heard the speech on Friday night. You know what the rabbi said? Abraham Avinu made a mistake. Abraham Avinu makes mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. We're all the same. No, that's not how it works. And when you do that, you bring the whole level of the congregation down. That's why most of the time when you hear a white hat teacher speak, you don't feel anything. A lot of times you go to those speeches, you don't feel that extra kedusha. Then you go speak another Talmid Hacham. You go to the class, you left. You feel like you just ate something. You feel like your stomach is filled. That was one of the secrets that one of the rabbis in Israel told me. He said, if you learn Torah and you leave and you feel like your stomach is filled, I feel like I just ate a meal. He said, okay, you're learning from the right place. But if you go and you're feeling empty, and the guy feels less religious. He went to shul on Shabbat. He heard the rabbi's speech. Okay, he doesn't want. The next time he does something, he's a little bit on a lower level. That's you understand. And I'm all for, like you said, learn that Ramban, but learn the whole Ramban. Learn from the beginning of the parasha till the end. Then the guy will walk out and be like, oh, Ramban loves Abraham Avinu. He loved him. It spoke everything good about him. You understand? And that's what it is they can take things out of the context, and that in and of itself can distort it. And that's one of the schools of what white hats were. Also, like I told you, the white hats try to source things from minhagim and things, but I told you, like, out of all the friends I have that are from the white hat shuls, there's so much shalom and achdut. And that's their strength. And you know what? As long as they continue to focus on the shalom and achdut, they're going to continue to grow. Because God wants the shalom more than anything else. We say it tons of times and everything. And unfortunately, when a person becomes very learned, one of the Yetzer Haras is he thinks he's better than other people. That is one of the tricks of the Yetzer Hara.
That's the main problem in the Haredi world. Everybody thinks the original.
And what does that cause? It causes that sinat hinam, and then it causes people to hate each other. You understand? He thinks that on them, and that's the issue. Let's continue a little bit more in the Gemara. Okay. Umokim la libraita kerabi Yosef bar Yehuda. Let's go bet lemala. We went to bet. Okay, let's explain. Umokim la libraita kerabi Yosef bar Yehuda. Okay.
Yes, this was the contradiction.
We want to see Rav Asher Kasha le Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, Umokim la libraita ki Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda. So he has a problem with Rabbi Yehuda, and he's now going to avoid the problem. He's going to bring now a braita from Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda. Okay, let's go. Umi
amar Rabbi Yehuda b'zman hazeh ho'il u'mistaklim ba en korim otam ela bizmana u'remina amar Rabbi Yehuda ematai מקום שנכנסים בשני ובחמישי, אבל מקום שאין נכנסים בשני ובחמישי, אין קוראים אותה אלא בזמנה.
Interesting. Explain to me, Lior. Okay. Umi amar. Now the Rabbi Yehuda b'zeman hazeh ho'il mistakelim ba en korim otah ela bizmana. Is that really what Rabbi Yehuda said in the Braita? Urminhi. Okay. We have another Mishnah. It's coming up in on Daf Hey. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, another braita. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, imatai makom shenichnasin b'sheni u'b'chamishi, av makom she'en nichnasin b'sheni u'b'chamishi en korin ota ela bizmana. So he says, Rabbi Yehuda now brings a statement. He says, when do you read it earlier? In places that they come in on the sheni and chamishi. If they do come in, then you could read it early. Are you getting? You get it? Okay, he's saying, what's Rabbi Yehuda saying over here? He's saying, when is the time that you can read earlier? normally you can only read 14 and 15. You can't read earlier than that. He goes, but in places that the villagers go in on Sheni and Hamishi, in those situations you can continue. You can continue. Okay.
Why? Because they're not going to come back again?
Read earlier.
You can read earlier. Yes.
Why? Because you don't want them to come back again?
No, because that was the Mishnah. The Mishnah stated you could.
Early is for them to come and to bring everything.
We gave them. Remember, we gave a few reasons. One, they were not baki. Rabbeinu Hananel said didn't have Sifrei Torah and Minyan. Then we said also Ma'im Umazon la'achehem bakerakim. We said a few reasons. What he's saying here, in order to clarify the kushya, is he's saying I have another braita. The other braita is.
So when you don't have benek kefarim or whatever, you have to read only Yudalet and.
That's what he's saying.
Yes, this is what this is saying. He's really giving us a third opinion here.
Yeah.
He's saying another thing. He's saying Yud Dal and Tetvav, everyone agrees. Okay. Then you have the next statement that you could read 11, 12, and 13.
Yeah.
You have 11, 12, and 13. Okay. Then you have Rabbi Yehuda that says, we brought a few brightot that says, no, if they're not Bet HaMikdash, Shruyin Al Matan, Sanhedrin, all that stuff, you can't.
Okay.
Then we have another Rabbi Yehuda statement that says, wait, I agree with everything you said. That if you don't have a Sanhedrin and Bet HaMikdash, no problem. You don't have to do it yet. If you don't have Yisrael Shruyin Al Matan, don't do it. Only 14, 15. The only time you do 11, 12, and 13 is when the villagers would normally come in to the town. If they're not coming in on the town, then don't do it. It doesn't work. Ivan? So Rabbi Yehuda give us a third one. What was our normal statement? First, we said you can only read 14 and 15.
Yeah.
Then you said you could read 11, 12, and 13 if you have Israel Alad Matam and you have the Sanhedrin. You have everything set up. Okay, good. So what does that do? It gives me two options. Before Bet HaMikdash, after Bet HaMikdash. Then came Rabbi Yehuda with this new statement and said, no, hold on a minute. There's one more little star at the end. That's if the villagers do come in Sheni and Hamishi, they could read early. Okay?
Just trying to think of a case of where you don't have villagers coming in.
Oh, there could be places, villages that just didn't come in. So it's seemingly that was the case. Okay, let's look at the bottom. Since the villagers do not travel, read it.
Since the villagers do not travel to the town on Mondays and Thursdays, they gain no advantage from being allowed to read the Megillah on the Monday or the Thursday preceding the 14th. Therefore, they too must read their Megillah in its proper time on the 14th.
Excellent. And he's bringing this from Rashi. Now that we turned the page, we're going to stop here because tomorrow I want to go back, finish Rabbeinu Hananel. We're going to go read a little bit of En Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. We're going to open Halacha. We're going to look at the Masot HaShas, Gideon HaShas, in the Kutei Rashi, because I told you when we were learning that I want to finish all these small letters around everything around the page, not just that. We did most of the Rashis. We'll finish them, and then we are lucky because we have our first Tosafot coming up of the page. It's on Bet Amud Bet. So we have that first Tosafot. Before we learn Tosafot, we're going to do a little background. Who was the Tosafot? Who were these rabbis from Provence? Knowing who the Tosafot were will give you
Do you have anything? I remember I used to do to the shul. We used to give them rabbi.
Yes. So for a long time, I was writing for the Shul of Bell Harbor, a biography every week on different Talmidei Chachamim. It was great. I only stopped it because something happened in regards to the publication. They stopped writing it in the way that I wanted it presented. So I continued writing it, but I'm moving them all to shul.com. I'm going to move it there. But if you want for tomorrow, I think
you have it anywhere printed?
No, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'll put them under the shul.com publications. I have like maybe 20 or 30 of them. Tomorrow, maybe we'll read one of them.
I do with my son.
Yeah. So you know what? I like it. So you know what? Maybe that's a good idea. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll produce a couple of copies tomorrow of one of the Giddulim. We can do that on a daily basis.
Maybe you can do it even with the kids.
Yeah, with the kids. Yeah, something we could talk about the Giddulim. I like it. So let me prepare. I'll prepare some of them, and then B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow we'll go back to page 2. By the way, we're here almost 3 weeks now on just this Gemara. Goes to show you how deep we're going. We're not, and we didn't even finish. We didn't go to the halacha yet. We didn't see all the details of it.
Where do you see halacha on the page?
Oh, very good. So if you look on the side on the left, it says En Mishpat Ner Mitzvah.
Those are all the halachot pertaining to this.
Yes. So, and I'm going to show you how you're able to look at the letters to do it. Thank you, Shai. Hashem should give you long life, good health. A lot of parnasa b'shefa u'bekalud b'li amal u'b'li torah. V'chen yehi ratzon v'nomar amen. Amen. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to the En Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. We're going to look at Harambam. We're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.